Oh, hello, everyone. It is me again. This is LB back for another episode of the Sit Down with LB. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, and this essentially is my first LB, the Sit Down with LB on location. And so, for those of you who are joining us already, I appreciate you. I already see some people here in the window, Johannes and Lee Doswell and Carl Vishkahauskas. I'm saying your name wrong, excuse me. And Jessica Zeller, always there. But I am happy to be with you again today. It's interesting. I flew from Florida to Chicago, and that was for me an interesting experience. Flying in the time of COVID presents some challenges, and so it was interesting getting on the plane. I would say it's probably the best time to fly because everything's clean and everyone's trying to be sanitary. Thankfully, I was very distant from people. I got a chance to sit about 3 seats away from someone. So I'm very happy that that all worked out. So I'm in Chicago. And again, I am just so happy to be doing this again. Hello, Leon Brown. Thank you for being here and supporting. I know Shaima, Barbara Wright Pryor is going to be here very soon. But today is a special day for me. A few weeks ago, I had one of my mentors, one of the people I really looked up to, one of the people I respect so much. As I was studying, I was a young singer, young African American singer, wanting to be a professional opera singer with this crazy idea of trying to pursue a career in opera. And so there weren't a whole lot of people that were role models for me. But obviously, George Shirley, was a person that was a tremendous role model for me. And, it's nice to have more than one. And specifically around the time that I was pursuing this career, I was starting at Seattle Opera. And I was introduced to the work of Vinson Cole. And one of the things that was so important about looking at Vincent Cole and knowing of his career and knowing that he's had such a tremendous career as a young singer, a singer of color, but also, I know this sounds silly, but he's not very tall, like I'm not very tall. And so when I looked at his career and saw all of the wonderful things he's done and getting the chance to really know his work, I was even more inspired. And I truly believe because I saw him do it, that I had the chance to have some career, never to the level of his, but just some career in opera. And so I've always, admired his work, and I've gotten a chance to know him over the years, and we've seen each other from time to time. And so he's someone that I call friend, a role model for me. And we are joined today by the incomparable Vinson Cole. Welcome, Vinson. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
There he is, and it's from Kansas City, right? Kansas City, Missouri, where you were
Yes.
born and
Mhm.
raised.
Well, I live in Fairway, Kansas, but I was born, which is the state line is just down the street.
Not too
So,
far away. Well,
no.
someone said that you were a childhood friend. One of your friends, Phil Kelsey, was a childhood friend, and you remember Phil Kelsey from Seattle Opera. And
Yeah.
one of the people in the window said, they love Phil Kelsey, and he spoke so highly of you. And so, obviously, you were beloved at Seattle Opera, in addition to many of the places you performed around the world. So, it is nice to have you here. So, as I said before, in the time of COVID, what have you been up to these days?
A lot of sleep, a lot of watching television,
Yeah.
doing some teaching, but there's not a lot to do. I mean, I'm very careful about taking care of myself and not getting myself infected or anything or going out any place where it might happen. And so I just, I sit at home a lot.
Yeah. Well, I do that a fair amount as well, and I think it's smart. But as you heard, I am in Chicago now, so I don't know if you're
Yeah.
taking the plane anytime soon, but
Nope.
you're going to wait until we get a vaccine, correct?
Exactly.
Well, let's jump right in. Let's talk about growing up in Kansas City, how in the world did a young guy from Kansas City have this desire to be an opera singer? What was your first encounter with classical music, if I may ask?
My first encounter with classical music was with my sister's high school, decided to do a mall and Mall in the Night Visitors. And I
Okay.
was the chosen mall. I had started taking voice lessons 2.5 years before I did that. And as most people, a woman heard me at church, and she was getting her master's at the conservatory. And she said, would you like to take lessons? Or I'd like for you to sing for my voice teacher. And I said, sure. And so I went and I sang for him. And my parents were very encouraging. They said, do you want to do this? And I said, yes, I'd like to do it. And so I took the voice lessons and I sang at every church, every women's committee, all sorts of things. And then I did this mall. And from that, I was hired by the Lyric as a voice soprano. I was 12 years old.
Oh my gosh,
And
that early.
yeah, oh yeah. I'd started studying when I was 9.
Oh
And
my.
yeah, and so then I did things that I did, like The Little Boy in Johnny Schicchi, Garandino. I did The Page in Rigoletto, The Little Boy in La Boheme. I did, all sorts of things as a kid. And then there was a Kansas City Boys Choir, and that was it. And so, but when I did the Amal, after I finished the Amal, I said, this is what I want to do.
You knew.
And I knew back when I was 11 years old.
Oh my gosh. And you said you had supportive parents, and so they obviously said, go with,
Yeah.
They gave you their blessing.
Yeah. My mother said, you want to do this? My mother had been a person, she didn't sing classical music, but she sang popular music, and she would sing and tap dance on the radio.
Okay.
So there was music in the family, and I had a great aunt who had studied voice to be an opera singer. Of course, that was like in the 40s, and that wasn't going to happen. But she was around, and I remember hearing her when I was a little boy sing, and I thought, God, she's got a beautiful voice. And so, yeah, I just wanted to do it.
So there was a real tradition there. And so
there was, yeah. And so there was no discouragement, I think, which happens so many times. I was encouraged. They said, if you want to do it, go for it. And so I did.
So even in high school, you started preparing to pursue the path and looking at schools and trying to figure out where a voice teacher was. You had a voice teacher throughout that time, I assume. And then
a voice teacher, yeah.
And they guided you to where you went. Yes.
Yeah, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And when I was 16 years old, I was doing The Shepherd Boy in Tosca. Mm-hmm. Because right after that, my voice changed. So I said, okay, we can't do this anymore. And it was very interesting because the soprano said, I went to her and I said, I'm really not a voice soprano. I'm faking it, but I can still do it. And I said, but would you hear me sing? And she said, sure. And I sang for her, and she said, you need to go to Indiana University and study with Margaret Harshaw. And and then they did a thing here, the Performing Arts Foundation, and they did Medea with Magda Olivero and all these people. It was great. And this one young woman who was doing the first Handmaiden, Mary Stribling, I started talking to her, and I said, where do you go to school? Or where did you go to school? She said, I went to India. And then I said, who did you study with? Margaret Harshaw. And this name kept coming into my life.
Wow.
So I knew back then when I was 16, 17, I said, okay, I've got to do this somehow. And I didn't go to Indiana. I stayed here and went to school. But I did go to Indiana one weekend when I was a sophomore for a NATS competition. And I went up to her door, and just as I knocked, she opened up the door, and she was frightening. Oh my God.
Go ahead, yeah.
I said, oh my God, and I explained who I was, because my voice teacher at that time at the conservatory here had sung with her at Indiana, and he had sung Parsifal to her, Kundry, and so I said, okay. And I told her who I was, and she was very, very nice and very polite, and, but when she opened the door, I just kind of went, oh my God, I'd never seen anybody quite like that, I thought. But I was still very impressionable.
Well, I didn't. I of course, before I went to Indiana University. I
Yeah,
think you might know that, and so
yeah.
of course there was a great legacy and history of Margaret Harshaw there. I didn't know her. Was she a tall woman or?
She was 5'9",
Okay.
but she was very. I mean, she really stood her ground, and it was like wow, and it was and she was very very nice, and then I met her years later, 4 years later in Philadelphia at Curtis,
Okay.
and that was that was the beginning of 23 years.
Did she remember you?
I asked her, I said, you probably won't remember me. And she said, I probably won't. And I said, but I didn't sing for you at that point. I introduced myself, and it was very, very, very nice. And you were very charming and very pleasant. And then we got along like a house on fire.
Okay. Wow. Suzanne Minster is here. She said, Vincent is one of the kindest and most talented of my colleagues. So, Suzanne, she loves you, is like most of the other people. And I'm having a lot of people from Seattle and various places. Carl's is here. Jim Lieberthal is here. And so, a lot of people, admire you as I do. And they're just, happy to have you here. So, as I said in my introduction, how much you're important to me, and I've looked at your career, and so you've sung everywhere. You sung at La Scala, the Met, Salzburg, London, Berlin, Paris, Lyric Opera of Chicago, San Francisco. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And so you've sung many things, but you did have a focus on a lot of French repertoire. Was that your choice, or did a lot of people just hire you for that?
It really started. I started doing French repertoire about the 5th year of my career, and then Spate Jenkins in Seattle started offering me this, and it just kept coming. It kept coming, and I mean, I was telling somebody the other night. I mean, in 14 years of my singing with the Seattle Opera, I sing 17 roles,
Oh my
and
gosh.
yeah, and I would say the majority of them were in French. I mean, there were a few Italian ones, but the majority were in French.
I think I saw you did Lock Me there.
Yes,
And you
with
did, what else
Carolyn
did you
Blackwell.
do? Yeah, with Harolyn, who I love as well. She'll be on here in a few
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
Harolyn, but I saw you do something else. I saw you do a couple things because, gosh, I can't remember. It was like 2000, so that's like 20 years
Oh,
ago. But yeah, but Spade Jenkins, as you know, obviously was very, very important to your career and was clearly very important to my
yeah.
career. And so, would you talk about what he meant to you? The fact that he gave you the opportunity to hone your craft. I know you were already established, but to be able to do such a tremendous amount of work there.
Yeah, he really took me under his wings and kind of said, and really would ask questions like, what do you want to do? What do you feel that you should do? And so that's how I got to do so many roles there, and so many in French. I mean, because the French language just started. I mean, in the mid 80s, I started going to Paris to sing a lot. I mean, I had
Hmm.
gone to Festival Saint Denis and sung a Stabat Mater, and Massimo Bongiacchino was running the Paris Opera at that point. And, the next day, my manager called me and said, you've got 5 years of contracts at the Paris Opera.
Oh
And
my.
I said, what? He said, yes. And
Cha-ching.
one of the most important ones was the 100th anniversary of Manon at the Opera Comique.
Wow.
And that was with Catherine Malfitano, and it was very important to do. I mean, and I was thrilled, to do that. And I had not. But the crazy thing is, I did all these things without having sung them someplace else. So I didn't even. I mean, I
So
walked
you
in
were
the stage and
debuting.
I was debuting the role, and here I was singing it for a French audience, without the same. I did Hoffman the same way, with never having sung it anyplace else, but I knew it was for me, and I said, I can sing this, and I thought, God, you're crazy.
But did you feel a
But
certain affinity toward that, the repertoire? It just seemed to sit well for you?
yeah, I love the way the composers, the French composers, would write. They wouldn't write just you're sitting at a certain up there, you went up and down all the time, and it was great. And the same way with the French song repertoire, the same thing. They understood the voice. Not to say that anybody else understood it less, but they really, I took it to heart and just ran with it.
Yeah, well, you talk about songs and singing in French. Of course, I purchased the "In Love with Love" CD many years ago that you had with the music of, was it Massenet and Reynaldo Hahn, and I don't know who else, but was it Meyerbeer as well? It might have been Meyerbeer.
No, it wasn't Meyerbeer.
It was French.
It was Massenet, Reynaldo Hahn.
Was it Berlioz?
No, it wasn't Berlioz. It may have just been those two, in fact.
Really? I thought it was more than that. It was more than that. I know it was more than that because I wore that CD out, but
I haven't listened to it probably a few days after it was made.
Are you telling me that you don't like to listen to yourself sing?
No.
No, tell the truth.
No, I don't. I mean, I have lots of recordings in my closet there, in the record closet, but I don't like to. I don't enjoy it because I'm so super critical. I said, "Oh, why did you sing it that way? Oh, you could have sung this better." To go back and listen to something that you did, umpteen years ago, you're going, "Oh my God, how could you do that?"
I'm the same way. I absolutely hate listening to myself. I don't like to do it. I don't like to put myself through it because I'm like, what in the world were you thinking, Larry, when you sang that phrase? But if I ever can listen to something that I think is, okay, that wasn't terrible, then I know, I'm pretty happy with it. And is that the same thing with you?
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty much, I don't know. Some people really enjoy listening to themselves, but I mean, I'll listen and I'll go, well, that wasn't bad. Okay. It could have been better, but that was,
Which means it was probably exceptional then.
Yeah.
Well, based on.
I got through it.
Yeah, well, oh my gosh. But it is important to listen to yourself. I don't like to do it, but I'm glad we share that as well. Again, I have so many people, Patrick McCoy and Nicole Heaston, and a lot of people, who are singers, they say they hate listening to themselves as well, but they're in here and they're happy to have you here. Bizet was also on the album. That's the B that was on that Reynaldo Hall. That was on that CD. So you talk about recordings and, was it a part of the plan to have a career that was equally balanced in both opera and, of course, song and, of course, mainly concert work? Was that a big push for you?
Yeah, my very first manager was a big conductor manager. And so I got to meet a lot of conductors and was engaged by orchestras. And this I enjoyed immensely, really enjoyed it. And then with my later manager, they did a lot of opera. And I had to beg them, I said, please call this symphony, please call. I mean, I want to sing, and they did. But I wanted to have an equal balance. And I think that many singers miss out because I think that singing in not just oratorial, but concert work is a fantastic way to help you in a career. And it's a fantastic way. It was very interesting because when I was singing with Karajan so much, he said to me, do you divide your opera and orchestra? And I said, yes. He said, good. He said, because you must do that because it'll save your voice. Huh. And it was very, very, very true to go from an opera and do 2 months of oratorio or whatever, and then back. And so it was great. Yeah.
Well, I try to do the same thing as well. And not to say that I try to pattern my career after yours, but it has been something that I've been doing a lot, is to try to have a lot of recitals. And I don't get as much oratorio work because, I'm a bit lighter of a voice than the repertoire you sang. And so for the type of voice I have, there's usually only Messiah or maybe an Elijah here or there. But I didn't get the chance to sing the Verdi Requiem or any of these other things. I did do the Mozart Requiem. But then I think as late, there are a lot of people who really specialize in just concert work. And so
Yeah.
you were fortunate to have, a major operatic career, but also a major concert career. Yes?
Yes. Yeah. I was really, really, it was something that I wanted to do, and I enjoyed doing it just as much as I enjoyed singing opera. It never seemed awkward. I mean, I had friends that said, they would tell me, we can't do all that concert work because we're actors. We have to, and we have nothing to act on. And I'm going, I enjoy using my voice as an acting prop. I mean, and the color, what you can do with it, and you have less people to fight with than you
Right.
do in opera.
And with concert work, a lot of times you really focus more, I think, on the voice. A lot
Yeah,
of times in opera, you'll be distracted by a sword fight, or you have so many other things going on, and entrances and exits. But when you sing concert work, you are really just focusing on being a communicating singer. Yes?
yeah, yeah. 100%. I mean, your concentration is that way, and it's out to the audience, and but it's I loved it. I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That's
do.
why I love doing recitals also. So they're fantastic.
Yes.
So,
Well, you mentioned Karahan. And so, would you talk about how important, you said earlier in your career, you were doing many things with him. How important do you think he was for your career? Can you?
terribly important. I mean, I sang an audition for him. There were 32 American singers that sang for him the 2 days that he was in New York listening. He was on tour with the Berlin Philharmonic. And I was the one person that he hired for Salzburg
Oh, my.
and to do Rosenkavalier. And I didn't even know there were two verses to their tenor opera. I'd learned the aria. I mean, I'd been singing the aria auditions probably about 4 or 5 years, but I never thought to look in the score. I just bought the music out of the music store. And then I found out that there was this other part of a verse, up a half step. And I went, isn't it high enough? And, and I said, oh gosh. But when they offered me the recording of it, I was in the midst of performances with the New York City Opera. And so I had to fly to Vienna. And I walked in the first day, and he said, let's do the aria. And I went, oh gosh. And he said, okay, sing it to the orchestra, to the Vienna Philharmonic. And I said, okay. And he said, no, sing it to them. So he turned me around, and I sang to the orchestra, the whole thing. And I thought, oh gosh. And so he said, we recorded it this afternoon. So we recorded it. And he said, are you happy? And I said, no, I'd like to do it again. He said, okay, you'll do it sometime in the next 2 weeks. We never did. And so the first take was it. That
Oh,
was
my
it.
gosh. That is
And
incredible.
I was scared to death. And, because, I mean, this was Herbert von Karajan. I mean, he's the greatest conductor alive,
Yes.
And, so I just thought, okay, this is, he said, you make me happy. That's all that matters.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And I thought, well, but I want to be happy too.
It matters what I think as well, yes?
Yes, exactly. And so I said, okay, fine. And, and then we did it in Salzburg. And that was the beginning of 9 years
Oh,
of
my.
him. Yeah.
The Italian tenor and the Rosenkavalier, I've done it twice. And I did it with Simon Rattle and Petrenko. And so I tell people all the time that it is 3 minutes of terror. And you only sing about a minute and 20 seconds. But after that first verse goes away, you come back and have to sing it a half step higher. And so I don't think I'll be doing that too many more times in the future. But it is one of those things that you earn your paycheck, don't you?
You do earn your paycheck. But I was really fortunate that I had a lovely, because in the middle of it, I would go and sit down and sit by Anna Tomova-Sentov, who was the Marshallin.
Yes.
She was one of the nicest ladies I ever met, and was just, and she would always speak to me and telling me, how wonderful it was. And I'm going, and I was just sitting looking at her like, can we do the second verse and get it over with? And it was just, but she was so she had a great calming influence on me during that. So it was crazy. Yeah.
I had Ana Harteros was the first time I did it, and so after I sang the first verse, I had to sit down on stage, and it was in Munich, and so I sat down on the couch next to her, and she said, "That was wonderful, but I hate you also." And then I get up and have to sing. She said when she came off stage, she said, "We sing the entire 4 hours, and the tenor comes for an hour for 3 minutes, and he steals the show." But you mentioned you mentioned von Karajan, and of course he was so important. But you've also worked with Schulte and Muti and Seijizawa and Simon Rattle and Mazur and Zubin Mehta and Abato and Barenboim, and the list goes on and on and on. And so, what is it like to have worked with some of the real geniuses or genius minds of music of the last 100 years?
It was fantastic because I was lucky to do a lot of the same repertoire with all of them. Mm-hmm. And going from one to the other was really magnificent. What was difficult was that I would do something like Missa Solemnis with somebody, and the next week I'd have to go off and do it with somebody who was really much lesser known. I won't say not conducting wise, but just, and I was getting frustrated, and I called Karajan's, the president of his company, and I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, you have to forget as soon as it happens.
Okay.
And go off and do your job. He said, because it's a job for you. And I said, yeah, but when you make music of that level, it's very difficult to forget it. And he said, you can take certain things along with it, but don't let it get to you.
Yeah. But let's also talk about the Verdi Requiem. Now that we're talking about conductors, how many of these conductors did you do the Verdi Requiem with, if I may ask?
Oh, gosh.
All of them?
I'd say pretty much all of them. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, with Karajan, Schulte, Abato, Simon Rattle, Ozawa. Yeah. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, I can't remember all of them, but
have you counted how many? Have you counted how many Verdi Requiems you've done?
I used to put like numbers behind in my score.
Oh.
And when I got to 157, and I thought, okay, that's plenty.
So how many times? Go ahead.
There were how many times did I actually do it?
Yes.
It was probably about close to 200.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, which is not, there are people, out there that have sung Donna Anna 200 and sometimes,
right.
But and it was kind of my party piece because I did it when I was in school. That my very first one.
Okay.
And when I was a student at Curtis, and then it was my second year as an apprentice at Santa Fe when they called me and they said, "We have Stuart Burroughs for the Verdi Requiem and he's pulled out. So would you be willing to do it?" And I thought, oh God. And so I remember calling Miss Harshon saying, "Do you think I can sing this?" And she said, "Didn't you just sing it in Philly?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, then you can sing it."
And that was the beginning of a string of them then, yes?
Yeah, that was the beginning of a lot, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
And how many times did you record it, the Verdi Requiem?
I think I only recorded it the one time with Giulini, but there are a couple of pirated things out there, and there's always more pirated things, as you well know. But I mean, I was very lucky. It was very special because I learned it when I was in college. No, I was in high school. We did it at my church, the church where I was singing at. We did the Verdi Requiem, and I was way too young to do the solos, so I just was singing in the choir. But then, of course, I say to myself, I could have sung this. And I'm thinking, you're nuts. I mean, so many times I would say that you're nuts. You think you can sing something and you can't. So
Yes. That makes me think. Were you the type of singer that you were more strategic in how you approached roles? You didn't rush in, or did you say, "Oh, I can take that on. I can do it," or were you one of these people that sat back and said, "You know what? I'm going to wait until I know I'm ready."
I would say that I probably did sit back and, I mean, when Spade offered me Don Carlos in French, and I thought, "You're crazy. I'm not the Don Carlos." And and he said, "Look at it and work on it." And it really is very, very, very different when you sing it in French. And I said, "Okay, I can do this." And I remember him, we were talking about the casting, and he said, "I want Florence Quivar for the Ebony." And I said, and so I approached her and I said, "Florence, would you sing this?" And she goes, "Hell no." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "I did it once in the Canary Islands." She said, "I'll never do this again." And I convinced her to look at it in French, and she looked at it in French. She said, "Well, it is very different." And so she ended up doing it. So it was great. I mean, to do the first one in French. I mean, I did it later on in Italian, then went back to the French, and so. But it was beautiful. When something was originally written, this was the original language. French was for Verdi, for
Oh, I
the
didn't
Don.
realize that. I
Yeah,
didn't
it was
realize that.
originally written in Don Carlos and in French, and then later on Verdi they translated it into Italian, but the French really, I know if you've learned it in Italian, you hate it in French, but for me, I loved it in French, and so whenever they'd ask me, I said, "Are you doing it in French or Italian?" And they'd say Italian. I said, "Oh, have you not thought about doing it in French with the whole 5 acts, with the Fontainebleau and everything?" They said, "No, we're not doing that."
Did you ever change any minds?
Almost. Almost. They wanted. They'd already announced it in Italian, and they were going to do it in Italian. So I said, "Okay, fine."
Well, Leon Brown asked the question, besides von Karajan, who was your favorite conductor to work with? I know that's hard, but
I did about 20 years with the Boston Symphony with Seiji Ozawa. And
okay.
Seiji had been a student of Karajan's. And so there was a kind of rapport there.
Right.
And you'd work with him, and Seiji would, the great thing about Karajan, he would listen to you. It wasn't like leading you. He'd listen and say, "Oh, you can hold that note a little bit longer tonight. Okay, fine." I mean, that's what would come out. And Seiji was very much in the school of him. And so I loved working with Seiji, but I also I adored working with Simon Rattle.
Oh, yes.
Great musician, just wonderful. And, and that's, I sing with so many people that I adored, that I really loved. And so, it's a hard thing. Giulini was great. Abato was a real delight. There are just so many. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. You're still relatively young, as I think you are. I think you're still relatively young. But, what was it like to be singing when people like Verrett was still singing? I know at the beginning of your career, Verrett was still singing, Arroyo, of course, Jesse Norman, Kathleen Battle, Leontine Price, Bumry, all of them were singing. There weren't as many black men singing as there were the sopranos and some of the mezzos. What was that like, living in an era where you were not, you shared the company or the stage with some of these people, like I mentioned?
I think that for me, I didn't sing big repertoire. And most of those people were singing
Verdi heroines, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to sing anything with them, other than with Shirley. We did a Verdi Requiem together with the Boston Symphony at Tanglewood. And she was divine. She was such a lovely lady, such a classy lady. And I got to know her really well when a friend of mine was teaching at Michigan, and I would go up to visit him, and and we would go out with Shirley all the time. And she was just, but these people all had one thing common, and that was like, And it was the same thing that I'd been taught, was that, focus on what you have to do, not on anything else. Just focus on doing your job, and it'll be successful, and it'll be good for you. And that's what I always thought about. I mean, Miss Harshaw instilled in that me a long time ago, from the very beginning, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
Yes. Did you look up to any of these? Obviously, these are some of the great voices of all time of opera. Did you look up to any of these women just to think, oh my gosh, I revere you, or I honor you so much?
Oh, of course. I remember when I was in college, Leontine Price came here to give a recital, and I went to the recital in Liberty, Missouri, and I went back to get her autograph afterwards, and and a friend of mine was with me, and she proceeded to tell Miss Price that, I was a singer, I was a tenor, yada, 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 yada. And she said, well, maybe we'll sing together. And I don't sing your repertoire yet. And I said, so, and she said, well, I don't know. And I said, how could you not? I admired her greatly. And I remember when I was a student at Curtis, they needed somebody to turn pages for Beverly Hills and Leontine. And I immediately said, I'll do it. And I did it. And Leontine she was so gracious. And the greatest highlight, I think, of my life was the last Rosenkavalier in Salzburg. And I was getting changed because I'm done after the first act, as you well know. And my dresser came in and said, you have a guest. And I said, I don't have any guests tonight. He said, yes, you do. And I said, oh, God. I said, I've got to change, and I've got to get out of this. And my hair was all sticking up and everything from the wig. And so finally I said, okay, let them come in. And in walked Leontine. And I was like, oh, my God. I said, it's you here in my dressing room. And that's all I could say. And she was introducing me to her friend, Ms. Chisholm, the daughter of the family that had helped her, and to Hubert Dilworth, her manager. And I was just going, it's you in my dressing room. It's you. And so I felt like a complete idiot. So I went downstairs when I was leaving at the Furtner, and she said she was there because of Karajan. She had come to see him conduct, and also she was going to Lucerne to see him conduct. And so I thought, oh God, okay. And I said, and I'd asked her where she was staying, and she said Österreicherhof. So I wrote her a note, and I said, it was a great joy for me to meet you again. And if you have the time tomorrow morning before you leave, if you could give me a call. And she called me the next morning, and I was like, oh my God. I said, this is not real. Because she was a person that my first album that I ever bought was the Blue album, where she sings Aida and Trovatore and the famous Chi del Sogno. It was like, oh my God. She was one person that, how could you not fall down on your knees and listen to that voice?
I'm sitting here and looking at the window where people are chiming in, and so many people are saying, I would have absolutely died if that had happened. Now, I have not had the great honor and privilege of meeting Miss Price. I met her brother, the late General Price, but Leontine, for so many of us, was such a goddess, and really the essence of a true diva in the most positive sense. And so the fact that you had a chance to meet her, and you're saying that you didn't perform with her, correct?
No, we never together, but she was divine. She really was divine, and she was very gracious, to me, I felt very, very fortunate to have met her and to have talked to her. And, she has somebody special, I was lucky. Another one that I met, and I was very lucky, was Mary Anderson. I was very fortunate. She was a very good friend of Robert Bass, who had the Collegiate Chorale for many years. And I've done a lot of performances with the Collegiate Chorale. So one day he said, would you like to meet Miss Anderson? I said, are you crazy? Of course I would. And he said, well, we have to go up to Danbury. And I said, let's go. And so we drove up to Danbury, and there she was. And she was so elegant and just so sweet and very soft-spoken, and just was charming beyond one's wildest imagination. And I feel very fortunate to have done that.
Oh my gosh. In the presence of greatness.
Oh, yeah. And she wanted to know everything that I was doing. She said, I've heard you sing and, with Bob and the Collegiate Chorale. And she said, but I want to know, what are you singing? Where are you singing? And I said, Miss Anderson, let me ask. And she said, she was more than happy to talk about her own career and about her own self. But she really wanted to find out what I was doing and how I was doing in all
Yes.
the madness of the world. So
And
she was great.
you know what? The great ones are like that. I had the same experience with Miss Norman. And so I remember the first time meeting Jessie Norman, who I know you knew, Jessie, and she was the same way, just really wanting to see me succeed and was very interested in the successes, that I was having. And she really wanted to know. And so it's not strange to hear that Miss Price and Miss Anderson would have been this way, because I think they also appreciate the fact that too, yourself, a person of color, also was being successful on a very, very large scale.
Yeah. No, she was really, as people say, divine. She was divine, and just gracious beyond words.
Well, I have a picture that is very, very dear to me. You remember the time all of us were in New York City when it was myself and you, and of course Martina, Harolyn Blackwell, Roberta Alexander, and also George Shirley. George Shirley, what was that like to have him as a trailblazer, if I can ask for yourself, being,
Well, I guess the first time I found out about George Shirley, don't ask me why, I never sang it, but I was looking at the role of Pelias for some bizarre reason when I was in college. And I bought his Pelias recording with Elizabeth Soderstrom. And that's when I first kind of met George, in that sense. And then also his Così fan tutte with Leontine. Mm-hmm. And then I was in Santa Fe a few years later as an apprentice. And they were doing La Callisto by Cavalli, and George was singing the lead in that. And I got to spend not a lot of time with him, but some time. And he was just an incredibly nice person and, giving, and just, we'd see each other at the ranch and he'd ask me how things were going. And he said, what are you doing? And he was just concerned that I wasn't doing too much too soon, because people did, they wanted, different things, and it's the way of the world. But he was just being a real gem and a sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, I love Mr. Shirley, and both of the two of you, as I say all the time, and maybe you get tired of hearing it, but both of you meant so much to me in my career in trying to pursue, this career as an opera singer. If I can ask you this question, what was your favorite operatic role? Do you know what that is?
I would say that my favorite, I had two favorites. The Count of Man, I loved singing Hoffmann. Loved it. And then also Faust in the Damnation de Faust. That was, even though it was in concert the majority of the time, but I did 6 stage productions of it.
Oh my.
I know it's weird because it's not staged that much.
Right.
But
it's mostly
Europe
concert.
It's mostly concert. But in Europe they staged it. And I love singing that role. I just love the way Berlioz writes. In fact, I did something very out of the ordinary, which most of the time I was doing unordinary things, was Le Freischütz, which was the Freischütz in French that Berlioz wrote for the Paris Opera, because it needed to be in French and it needed to have recitatives if it was going to play at the Paris Opera.
Okay.
And so Christoph Eschenbach found it and did it, and he asked me if I'd do it, and I said, I can't sing Max. Max is way too dramatic for me. And he said, look at it. Here's the French score, and you'll see. It'll work. And it was like the same thing with Don Carlos. It was the same. Once I started working on it, I said, this really works. And I only did it the one time, but I loved doing it. I was always pushing. In fact, I was pushing Spade. I said, "Don't you want to do Berlioz?" I mean, it's Weber's Freischütz, but it's Berlioz's version of it, and it was great. It was so beautiful, and all the recitatives and stuff, all that dialogue. Oh God.
Let me ask you this: why do you think doing something in French makes it easier? I mean, you've said that a couple times. I've heard that many times in my career. I'm getting ready to do Lucia di Lammermoor, and I've never done it before, and I'm doing it in Italian. But I think I probably would appreciate doing it in French. What is it about the French vocality or just the language itself that makes it lighter?
I would say it doesn't make it lighter. It just makes it more accessible because the French language just, I don't know, you don't have the same stress and accents that you do in Italian or in German or Freischütz. It was just very, very, very different. For the Don Carlos, it was originally written in French, and I think that if the original language of something is real, it's like singing. God, how many times when I was first singing, doing Bohème in English, and when I did it in Italian at New York City Opera, finally I went, "Oh, thank God!"
Right. What is this thing? It's a whole new opera, it seems, right?
It was just so easy and just such a gorgeous sing. So I think maybe that had something to do with it. But the French language is when I say softer, I don't mean volume-wise, but softer in texture.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, yes, you have dramatic inflections in the Damnation, but it's just very, very. It's just a different, approach. And I mean, like Hoffman is. When I finally did it, and I kept putting it off, my managers kept saying, "Why don't you want to sing this?" And I said, "I don't know if I'm ready for it." And they said, "You are ready for it." And I said, "Okay, fine, let's do it." And I did it. The first time was at the Paris Opera, knucklehead that I was. And I was very fortunate that Janine Rice, who just died recently, was the coach on it. And she was phenomenal, just working.
Great.
Every day we'd finish rehearsals and she'd say, "Let's go down in this basement and work." And we'd work on not just the singing, but the staging of it. And it was just, it's something like that it demands a lot of attention. And I got a lot of attention from her, who then for the general rehearsal, which is the dress rehearsal, we only had one day in between the dress and the premiere. And so I told the conductor, I said, "I would really like to sing, in the pre-general and sing a certain amount in the general and then do the premiere." And they said, "Okay." So I said, "But you've got to make an announcement." I said, "I know this French public." I said, "They will take me to task for not singing that much, in the general." And so anyway, so they made an announcement. But they never said, and they never really said I wasn't going to sing. So, when I came back at the end, I said, "I don't need to take a bow." Oh, no. And they made me take a bow. And of course, the audience went, "Oh, how dare you not sing?" And, and then I got a knock at the door and I said, "Oh, God, who is this?" And I opened the doors. There's Janine. And she said, "I heard every note." I said, "Oh, thank you." And I said, "Oh, my God." And there was Regine Crespin, who had come up there. And Regine said, "These people are idiots." And I said, "Regine, I mean, these true bigger than life divas, and, she just was so kind and said, you don't have to sing, you did it, and so she said, "I'm sure you'll give a brilliant performance on Friday." And I said, "I hope so." And, but, that's the way life is. You get lots of unexpected treats.
Yeah. Well, you're mentioning so many of these names, of course, Regine Crespin and all these other people. Let's talk about some of your leading ladies. Did you ever run into a situation that you said, "Oh my gosh, never again"?
Yeah. It wasn't very often, but I did a few times run into somebody that was like difficult. I mean, in a certain way. And they're mostly Europeans, unfortunately, because I have great divas that I worked with in Europe. American sopranos, or my prima donnas. Oh God, I mean, I was very, very fortunate to have worked with some really incredible singers, including Suzanne Menzer, which we did Hoffman together at La Scala, and Carol Van Ness. We did many things in Seattle together, and it was just, I was really fortunate to have really wonderful colleagues, and I have no real complaints, and I can't even remember the names of those two sopranos that I sang with in Europe. It was in Comfort, and they were just impossible. And I thought, well, okay, we're not going to do it again. I mean, most of the time, if there was ever anybody that I had not problems with, but just I thought, I don't want to make music with this person anymore, it would be a conductor. And it would be because they were not a really great conductor. And so they resented somewhat the fact that I was coming to them, and I knew, I wouldn't say more than them, but I knew at least as much as they did regarding certain things.
Well, having worked with so many of the great genius minds, of course, when you get into a production with someone who clearly is not at that level, it wears on you as an artist, does it not?
Yeah, and it's like, you're starting to go, oh God, I can't sing this because this person is dragging me down.
Right.
And I said, and I need somebody to help me lift up, and but we got through everything. There wasn't anything that only one time did I just say, I can't do this, and turned and walked out.
I was going to ask you that. Did you ever pull Devo in any situation?
Just this one time. That's it. And unfortunately, it was for the Verdi Requiem. And I had done two other ones that summer, and I was doing this one, and the conductor was really impossible. He had never conducted the Verdi Requiem before, and he didn't understand certain things, and especially the Verdi style. And I mean, it's obvious. It's on the printed page, and and he would want certain things, and finally I just said, I'm not going to do that. And when the rehearsal ended, I just went back to the hotel and called my manager, and I said, I'm sorry, but I've got to leave. And I left.
Bravo.
Which was really rare for me, because I would stay and stick it out and say, I can make this work. I can make this work. I can make this work. And I thought, well, why? He's not going to change.
Right.
So you're just going to be fighting for the next 3 days, inside of you, because it's your.
Well, it becomes more about ego. It becomes more about ego at that point. And sadly, a lot of people don't want to serve the music as much as they want to serve their own egos.
Yeah. And you can't, you cannot make them that somebody do something they don't want to do, or that they see so totally different from you.
Right. They're trying to reinvent. And as you said, it's on the page what Verdi intended, but they feel like they have to create some type of groundbreaking discovery of a performance practice of Verdi or something. I don't know.
Not going to work. At least not with me, because I wouldn't be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be. It just would be it would be very difficult to make that happen. So
let me ask you, in the era that you were coming up as a singer and you were gaining notoriety, and of course working with these names, of course going to Europe and probably doing an equal amount of work in Europe, in the States. Would you say that's true, or would you say more work in Europe?
Probably more work in Europe. It was probably 60% there and 40% here. Yeah, this is back and forth. Yeah.
Did you ever come in contact with any overt racism, being a Black American?
I did And funnily enough, it was here in America. And my manager told me that a certain gentleman would not hire me because I was Black, and he couldn't have me singing with a Caucasian soprano. And this is one thing that I would always say, whether if somebody didn't like me or it was this, I always just said, well, let's find another job. And that's what we did. And that was, and I always said, I feel sorry for him. It's his problem. It's not mine. I can't, we all have these brains, and we can decide whether or not to make them work properly or not, or to shut down and not recognize a fault. And I just said, no, I said, okay, I'm sorry not to do it, but let's go on.
That's a great attitude to have about it. And one of the things that I talked to George Shirley about that as well. He said you have to knock on different doors. He said every door won't open for you, and so those doors. I think you may have said something like that to me when I was in Seattle. I pulled you off to the side, and I think I said, how much I admire you, and you gave me the advice that everybody's not going to love you, and it's really important that you have to find that door that opens.
Yeah. And you'll find people that really love you. I mean, like, I was very fortunate to find that in Seattle with Spate. I found it with Moffat Oxenbolt in Sydney, at the Opera Australia. And in Europe, I mean, it was just, it just, doors just kept opening. And I'm sure there were other things that happened. And I just didn't know. I don't want to play that I was ignorant, but I didn't know what was going on a lot of time. And my job is to do Ms. Harshaw instilled in me such a work ethic that it was like, just keep your focus on what you're doing. And that's what I did most of the time. I just thought about that. Because if you start thinking about the other, you'll become so incredibly frustrated.
I agree.
And you let anger build up inside of you. And, that's not to say that you don't say it's not there, but you just don't necessarily all the time, go out and scream and yell and carry on. My idea is that if my singing is really, really good, you'll have to like me eventually. And sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, but I didn't care, I just wanted to do the best job that I could do.
Yeah. Well, we talked about racial discrimination. And so I've asked this question before. Did you ever deal with height discrimination? Because.
No, I was really fortunate. I know, I'm 5'8", and that just was that little bit. But I had wonderful colleagues who did incredible things. Carol Vaness, we did numerous things in Seattle together. We did Tosca. And I remember she came out for the first entrance of Tosca. And I just stopped. And I said, really? And Carol Vaness is already, she's 5'9" or 5'10". And she had a turban on. And then she had a huge feather that went up, over there, and a veil. There was a tacked here. And I thought, really? And that was gone before the duet was over with. And when we did Barlow together at Seattle Opera, I remember when we started the duet, she was on one side of the stage, I was on the other, and little by little, as she came closer to me, she was my height, and she would make herself adjustable. And when we did Rigoletto, I never forget. We were doing Rigoletto at City Opera, and I thought, oh my God. And I remember calling up Beverly Sills and I said, look, Carol's so tall, because we were in the Met auditions together. And I said, I don't think this is the best idea. And she said, don't worry. She'll sit down when you're singing behind her, and she'll stand up as you're going up the stairs. And that's truly exactly what happened.
Right.
When we started the video, I was going up the steps, and it just worked. And Carol was great at doing that in whatever else we were doing. She made it work.
I've had so many sopranos tell me, and you're a little bit taller than I am. I've had so many sopranos telling me that don't worry, I'll come in for a landing. and so they knew how to they knew how to get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, my wife is taller than I am, and so I don't mind. I've dated many tall women that are taller than me because it seems like all the short women want to date tall guys, and so the short
Right.
guys used to date. They have to go for the taller women, but it was never a problem for me. Let me ask you
Yeah.
this now. Part of what you're doing now, and I don't know, do you still perform from time to time? Is that correct?
No, I decided 2 years ago, I did a recital in Aspen, and I said, I think this is when Miss Harshaw would have said stop. Because I asked her, I said, how do you know when to stop? I said, does your voice go away? And she goes, no, usually your voice is always there. It's your body starts to give out.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, you can't breathe as easily as you did. You can't make it work. And I said, okay. And I mean, in Aspen, of course, it's complicated because the altitude is really, really treacherous.
Exactly.
And so I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, I don't have any need to do this anymore. I cannot create another whatever recital or even a concert, Beethoven Ninth or a Verdi Requiem. I said, there are plenty of people out there who can do this and do it very well. And I said, it's time for you to so I just decided I'm not going to do this, and which is great,
Did you announce it as your last performance, or it just was?
No, it just was. When I finished it, I said, this is it.
Really,
I
and
didn't
you
say
knew.
it.
And you knew.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's not to say that I can't. I mean, I still sing around this house all the time,
I'm
and I still
sure.
sing in my voice lessons. I'm a great demonstrator, but I just thought, I just don't think, I've done it. I did it for 40 years. I didn't think that I needed to do any more. I didn't have anything else to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't anything new that I was going to sing. So I thought, then just let it go. And so I did. I mean, I didn't say anything. I just let it happen.
Well, do you ever sit in the audience and you hear someone sing and you think, I could still do that, or I could get up there
Oh,
and
of course.
show him how it's done? I can show him how it's done. Oh no, 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 no. Oh no, 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 no. That's not the way it goes. Where you
Oh, yeah.
could get up from your seat then and show them, right?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah. No, I think about that and I go, and then I think, you don't want to get up there and do that.
Is there ever a Go ahead,
Go
please. I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, I said singing a phrase is simple. It's like singing the whole aria or the whole evening that you go, what have I done? You're
Right.
crazy. Yeah.
Is
No.
there ever a fleeting thought, like, or has there been, after you said I'm done, has there ever been that fleeting thought you're like, nah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have many fleeting thoughts even in today's world. I sit there and I go, I could do that. And I think, no, you don't want to. Because you're not going to get anything out of it. I mean, the performance. I always wanted to, when I did a performance of an opera or oratorio or a recital, I wanted to feel like I had given of myself so much that when I finished, I thought, oh, great. I said, now I hope they enjoyed it, because I enjoyed doing it. I don't say I wouldn't enjoy hearing it, but I enjoyed doing it. And I would say that was fun.
Let me ask you this, if I may. Can you sit here, and it's probably impossible because you've been, as you stated before, a part of so many wonderful musical experiences in your life. Is there one thing that stands out as the most memorable and fulfilling moment in music you've ever had?
Wow. I can't say that there's just one. I mean, there are
It's
many.
hard.
It's hard. I mean, my debut at Salzburg Vicarian, that was, it was memorable and frightening. I remember standing on the stage thinking at the Großes Festspielhaus and thinking, what are you doing here, Vincent? You're from Kansas City, Missouri. You're, you know, a 31-year-old kid singing with the world's greatest conductor and sound maker, and you have no right to be doing this. But I wanted it. When I auditioned for him, I knew he was looking for a tenor, Rosenkavalier. So I said, okay, I'll sing it. So I did have. There were certain times I'd have real good thoughts, like I can do this, I can do that, and you know, and of course I did it. And but I loved that. That was probably the most impressionable thing performance I ever did. So,
Was
and I
there
did. I mean, go ahead.
was there ever a moment that you wept on stage because of the the just the moment itself that just took you to a place that you thought, ah, and even if it wasn't the night that you sang the best, but you felt like there was something absolutely special. Even when I think about my career and the 20 years that I've been singing now, you know, I can remember few super, super special moments. And I've been fortunate to be a part of some great moments, but a truly special, special moment. Can you think of something like that that was just absolutely magic for you?
I think that there was a piece that I sang quite a bit, and I loved it. It was Elgar's The Drumagerontius.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's very, I mean, it does, you don't have to be a believer, but I mean, but when you hear these words, um, at least for me, the words and the way that everything was written and the music. And there's this incredible prayer after I'm actually dead in the piece that the mezzo sings, the angel. And every performance I did of that, no matter what I did, I would have tears. I would
Mm-hmm.
try not to. I would bite my tongue. I'd bite my lip. I'd clench my fist and stick my fingernails into my fist. And I couldn't stop it because I didn't want to, because I thought, I don't want to look cheesy. This is, I mean, this is so real. And, you know, and I couldn't, but it was great. It's a great, great piece and great moment and for the tenor to sing and to listen to this mezzo. I mean, when he says, take me away, I mean, oh, you get taken away. So, oh, it's great.
Yes. We're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, but let me talk a
Okay.
little bit about your teaching now.
Yeah.
How fulfilling is it for you now to be really passing on the legacy of the great Margaret Harshaw and teaching students that are going out into the world now to become singers all over the world?
I would say the one thing for me, which I told people before, I said, on my tombstone will say, Vinson Cole, performer, not teacher. I said, even though teaching will have been a great part of my life, I think of myself as I'm not as a singer now, but I mean, but I was a singer for 40 years. I mean, I was a singer for more than that,
Mm-hmm.
really, you know, because it's count my voice soprano days. That's what I was. I was always, always a singer. And so in going out and teaching, I didn't think I'd be a very good teacher. And I remember telling Miss Harshaw, I said, I don't want, she would talk about it. She said, now when you're teaching at school, and I said, oh, Miss Harshaw, I'm not going to do that. And she said, but of course you are. And I said, no, I'm not. And when it started happening, I thought, oh my God, she's come back to haunt me and get me to do this. And, you know, I've been very fortunate to have had some wonderful, talented students. I've been, anybody that I worked with, they were selected by me in whatever capacity it may be, whether it was giving master classes or giving private vocal instruction. And I took somebody who I thought might listen to me and might take what I have to offer them. And I don't think that anybody, I've said this numerous times, I said, I don't think anybody can teach everybody. I think that, you know, you find what works for you. And for me, she was it. And so, I mean, so my teaching is thoroughly based on, listen to me. If you don't like it, if you think it's not going to work, by all means go and find somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I will never, punish someone for leaving me. I have because 9 times out of 10, I would say when they left, I'd say, oh, thank God. And that the personalities weren't going to work. So, they've come to a realization, and I've come to the realization, and so let's help them get someplace else.
Over the last probably 10 years now, I've given so many master classes, and even with my own teacher, I realized that good teaching is really about communication, and communication is something that's reciprocal. You being a good communicator, and them to be able to take in that information and to be able to apply it to them. And so, I tell people that there are many schools of singing, but I just tell people I am an extension of my teacher. And so the things that have caused me to be successful are the things I'm going to share with you. But they may not work for you. And if they don't, that's fine. But I know that the technique that I've gone around the world with has been something that's sound. Yes?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's the only way one can be. I mean, you can't. My wanting to teach chemistry. I've never been a chemist. So how can I go into a classroom and say this N equals da 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 da, whatever? I couldn't, and I wouldn't. So I mean, when you get somebody who can explain to you exactly what you need to do to get from A to B, you say, okay, fine. And I was fortunate to have her. And then, when I've been doing it now all these years, oh God, for the last 18, 19 years, something like that, I feel very blessed to have worked with people that I work with and be surrounded by, very talented teachers and other very, very talented musicians. And it's a real joy. It's a joy to see somebody take flight with what you've given them, and they just go off in your hand saying, thank you. So
how much pride do you feel in the fact that the instruction that you've given, or the fact that you've seen the development of a singer that, as you said, takes flight? How much does it really touch you or make you feel fulfilled that you've been able to help them?
I think that the operative word is able to help them. When I feel like that works for them, great. The pride, I do have pride, and I'm like thinking, oh, good, but it's not the same way that I feel about my singing. I mean, as I say, on my tombstone it'll say Vinson Cole singer, whatever. I won't say, I said the teaching part was something that came towards the end of my career, and it's just embellished it and made it, a wonderful fit. I mean, what I have here in Kansas City has worked out really well, and I'm very, very happy with that. So, it's just life.
Well, I have another tidbit of information that I think is very interesting. You were born on November 21st?
Yes.
My birthday is November 24th, so we're now a few years apart.
And I'm a Scorpio.
I'm right on the cusp. I'm right after it changes. But Vinson, I have to tell you, I am honored that you decided to sit down with me. You have been enjoyed immensely. So many wonderful comments that I've been looking at during our conversation together. I'll tell you again how much I admire you and how important you were for me to believe I could be hope and believe that I could be successful. So for me and many of the tenors and many of the people in this chat room and out there in the world. Thank you. Thank you for everything, for being an inspiration and everything else. And so I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
My pleasure. And I'm very, very happy to have done this. And I'm very, very proud of you, and I'm glad you're being so successful in doing the repertoire that you do, which is very important, and especially for a tenor, an African American to sing 40 times.
Well, I tell people I wear my shoes one size too small to sing that super high. But more than anything, it's really about singing what we were built to sing, and all the things you've been, that's what you have to. So
you are what you are.
You are what you are. I love that. And so please continue to stay safe in the midst of COVID. Hopefully, when all of this dies down, I'll get a chance to see you again somewhere, and we'll actually sit down and maybe have something to eat and drink, and just spend more time chatting. But it has been a real pleasure for me tonight. Thank you from all of the people again in the window. And so I wish you well, and hopefully, again, as I said, hope to see you soon. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And for all of you out there who've been here and have been supporting me every week, I appreciate it. Next week, I actually have a session. The episode will be Ask LB. So, someone said to me, why don't you do one of the sit down with LBs where you actually talk about your life? And I think people are tired of hearing about me, but I'll make myself available for people to ask questions. So next week I'll be doing featuring Larry Brownlee, the sit down with LB. So everyone take care, stay socially distant, and we will see you very soon. Thank you so much.
Good night.